Hey guys, welcome back to Off the Wall. I'm Mike. Just flying solo again this week. Soul is still traveling the world. Last I checked, she was up in Canada, so having fun. So it's just me here again to talk about another episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law. Episode 7 dropped on today, Thursday morning when I'm recording this. So I wanted to talk about this one. I put some early thoughts out on Twitter, and I do stand by those thoughts that I felt like this episode was very well written, very well directed, very well edited, very well acted. I thought this was, again, a very strong episode. We've had 2 so far this season that I thought were excellent episodes of television, excellent episodes of superhero television that I was very on board for. I have some criticisms in terms of like the grander scheme of things, but as a standalone episode of television, I thought this one was very, very good. We see some moments in this episode that were actually featured in a lot of the first trailers for the show that are being shown in a different light, particularly where she's talking about, she's having that conversation with a group who in the trailers we don't see, but in this video, in this episode, we see that it's the group hanging out at at Abomination Blonsky's little Oasis retreat thing. Hashtag Obama stay. That made me laugh pretty hard, actually, when I saw that on the poster. But in the trailer, it was just her having the conversation of, you know, that friend that's cooler than you and better looking than you? Hello. And it was kind of shown to be as kind of this like funny, sort of almost a girl power moment in the trailer. In the episode, it's a part of a much bigger conversation about self-identity and self-esteem, and taking a longer look at just the things she's had to go through in her time since becoming She-Hulk. And I thought it was a very good example of how clever marketing can be, how you can take a scene out of context and have it mean something totally different. And I liked seeing that. I thought there was some fantastic editing with this episode, whether it was a seamless door closed, door open transition in the beginning, pulling kind of a Miss Marvel and incorporating some of the cell phone graphics into the scene as it's going along. I thought that was done very well. Some great cinematography, use of a lot of overhead shots, just a very well done, very creative use of editing and directing in this episode. I thought that Tatiana Maslany crushed this episode. The moment with her kind of just talking through her shit in the support group was so heartfelt. This episode was incredibly relatable. And I don't think it is as relatable if Tatiana Maslany doesn't nail it quite like she does, because who among us has not gone through that weird early stages of dating someone insecurity like she's having there, where it's like, what do you do the morning after the first time you have sex? Like, do you text, you know, thanks, bro? Like, what do you say? And then when you don't get that immediate response, what do you think? And coming to terms with the idea of someone ghosting you, it's like, how long do you wait to decide, okay, yeah, no? And considering what she's been through, there's a lot of people who go through that. So it was a very relatable episode. Again, the directing, and I say that knowing that the person whose name I don't have in front of me, Anu Valia, directed this episode, which I thought was probably the best so far in the season. But she also directed the last episode, which I thought was one of the worst this season. So it just goes to show that, you know, anything can happen from one episode to the next. Noticeably absent from this episode was, once again, Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, Daredevil. Now, last week we talked about setting our expectations a certain way. This is not Daredevil's show. This has never been Daredevil's show. This has always been She-Hulk's show. But we've known for a long time that he was coming. In the second or whatever trailer that we got, I think from Comic-Con, he was shown at the end of the trailer. And then during D23, the mid-season promo had a lot of Charlie Cox Daredevil. And then the end of episode 4, we had the Daredevil horned helmet tease. And so I can understand why people are very frustrated he hasn't shown up yet. Now, Charlie Cox's Daredevil is one of the most popular characters in the MCU. Um, his series knocked it out of the ballpark for all 3 seasons. When the conversation of bringing these other characters back into the Disney Plus fold, his name is always the one that gets brought up. They've announced this 18 episode series that's coming. People are salivating. They are foaming at the mouth for more Charlie Cox Daredevil. And let's not even forget the No Way Home scene that happened in Spider-Man No Way Home. I firmly believe that the people behind She-Hulk shot themselves in the foot by announcing in the advertising that he was coming. I really and truly do. I understand the motivation behind it because you know that with the nature of the show of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, you know that you're gonna have a bit of adversary coming at you, putting the show out. So you tease that Daredevil's coming to help pull in viewers and motivate people to watch. At this point, it's starting to feel like bait on a hook. Especially after the tease from episode 4 and that mid-season promo, it's starting to feel like bait on a hook. Because now we are at episode 7 of 9. We're at episode 7, and he hasn't come in yet. You've got 2 episodes left. I highly doubt you're going to use him in the finale because it's the finale. You kind of want the final episode of the season to be about the main character. If Daredevil's in the finale, you run into a situation like Star Trek Enterprise had, where the final episode was all about the next generation. It wasn't really about Enterprise. So I would assume we're going to see him next week. That being said, they should not have teased him. I firmly believe that. I feel like it has backfired because now that's all anyone can talk about. And that's all anyone's waiting for because they kept teasing it. If he had only shown up in that one preseason trailer, I don't think it would have been as big of a deal. But because they teased him a lot in the mid-season promo, plus that little tag on episode 4, you've drummed up a little too much buzz for Daredevil when it should have just kept the focus on She-Hulk, which kind of takes me to my other big criticism. As much as I liked this episode as a standalone episode of television, as an episode in a 9-part series, I still feel like we're missing something. And I think that something we're missing is a cohesive plot. They keep teasing an overarching story. They keep hinting that there's an overarching story. We have seen little to no movement on it. And what has happened has been either off to the side or has been in like the last 30 seconds of an episode. And I keep hearing a lot of people, when I voice my frustrations with the show about why I don't like the show, my complaints being about a lot of the writing and story structure, I get a lot of pushback from folks saying, well, it's just meant to be like an episodic sitcom. I'm like, okay, that's fine, but then stop with the plot teasing. If you want it to just be an episodic sitcom, just be an episodic sitcom. If you want it to have an overarching plot, have an overarching plot. But you can't have it both ways. You can't call yourself an episodic sitcom and write it like an episodic sitcom, structure it like an episodic sitcom, and then still try to sprinkle in a plot. At the end of the day, if you tell a good story, I could give a crap what the genre is. If you want to make a sitcom, but don't like, not even the Daredevil thing, but just like the stuff with the people who are hunting her down. I mean, when you look at 7 episodes of television we've had, 30 minutes apiece, I think the amount of time we have spent on the story arc probably amounts to 2 minutes out of whatever 30 times 7 is, 2100 minutes, I think. Yeah. Maybe 210 minutes. Why am I doing math right now? 210 minutes. Of those 210 minutes, we've probably only had 2 to 3 full minutes of anything story related. And so to me, it kind of just feels like, oh, then why bother? Why bother having it? And if you feel like, well, we need to have some kind of story, well, then tell some kind of story. Stop. It just feels half in, half out. It feels half-assed. And it feels to me like in general, they're just not taking this show very seriously. And I know we've talked about it on here before where a lot of what they're doing seems to be to intentionally poke the bear and intentionally piss off their critics. I don't need a show. I don't need a show to be a troll. Okay. The internet is already full of trolls, a lot of whom were coming after the show before it even aired. There's already a lot of trolls out there. I don't need this show to be one of them because you're not going to make me a fan. Like you're not changing anyone's mind with the way this show is going. Do I feel like this episode was a big step in the right direction? Yes. Again, as a self-contained in its own little bubble episode, this episode did very well. As far as the overall, world this show is in, I still feel like they just don't know what they're doing. And that's really upsetting when you look at the absolute gauntlet of talent that is involved in this show, both on camera and behind the scenes. So, what I'm worried about is getting yet another repeat of what we had with Ms. Marvel and with Moon Knight and even with Obi-Wan, where we dance around the main story and we keep doing all this side stuff. And then before you know it, it's the final episode. We've got 30 minutes to wrap up an entire season. And I feel like that once again, when you've got 9 episodes, when I had heard it was going to be 9 episodes, I was like, they've got time. They don't need to rush the story. They've got plenty of time to just spread it all out and take their time. But they've spread themselves too thin now. It's fine for the first couple of episodes, but we are 2 episodes left and we still have absolutely no idea what's going on. None. We have no idea who the villain is. We thought the Wrecking Crew. We thought the Wrecking Crew was going to be a big part of this. They were in episode 2, 3, one of those. Never saw him again. And then in this one, the crowbar guy shows up and he's all zen now. Okay, I guess the Wrecking Crew aren't going to be an issue anymore. Who are they working for? That's the story stuff that I'm having an issue with, where it's like, you've got this guy there. They tried to steal your blood with a giant needle. You've referenced it a couple of times now. Why would you not ask him who hired him? Why would you not ask him why they wanted your blood? Why would he not volunteer that information? Hey, you're right. We did mug you. Here's why. By the way, since we're like buddies now, here's what you should look out for. None of that. Then what was the point of it all? Same with Titania. They pitched her like she was going to be this big bad villain of the show. She didn't really do a whole lot. And I guess we're just done with her now. So what? I know we had mentioned in a couple weeks ago that I thought it was the one guy she went on a date with that called her a specimen, who I guess is a client at the law firm. Okay. What's going on with him? Haven't seen him in a while. Who is Hulk King? That was the dude with that Josh or Jeff or Jonathan, whatever his name is, Justin, whatever his name is, was texting that he got the blood. Who is that? We haven't seen the name Hulk King before. I don't know. I don't know. And that's my problem, is we have 2 episodes left. This episode answered a couple of questions, but it left a lot more unanswered. And it even asked some new questions that I really don't think we have the time to deal with now. So we've got 2 episodes left. Odds are next week is going to be the Daredevil cameo episode, because I would really hope they wouldn't make that a part of the finale and take away from She-Hulk in the finale, because the finale needs to be all her. From a good storytelling and a good writing perspective, the finale needs to be all about Jen and She-Hulk. Having Daredevil in the finale is going to overcast any of that. So odds are episode 8 next week is going to be the Daredevil episode, which, cool. Now we can see it, and some people will just shut the hell up about it. myself included, and we can move on. But for the love of God, it just it feels like, I enjoyed this week's episode as it was, but there's still a lot more this show needs to do, and I'm just not sure if they're gonna. At this point, I have no faith that they're gonna stick the landing. I do think this is gonna go down for me as my absolute least favorite thing Marvel has done in both the movies and the TV shows. Like this has been a very frustrating season of television that I keep holding out hope for. Like, I really want this to be good. I really want them to find a way to nail this in the end. If the next two episodes are as good as this one, if not better, we can have that conversation. But I don't have a lot of faith at this point. I'm here till the end because I've made it this far. So yeah, I got a lot of thoughts on this episode. I got a lot of things about it I liked as it is, but in the grand scheme of things, I just still feel like they don't really know what they're doing. At least I hope they don't know what they're doing. If this is all intentional, to me, that's worse because you've now just kind of wasted everyone's time. If your intention was to be this all over the place just to piss off some naysayers, you've wasted a lot of people's time and money, and that to me is kind of the worst part of it. So I'm curious to see what comes next. As I say every week, I am rooting for everyone in this show. I am rooting for the actors. I am rooting for the writers and the directors. I really want this to nail it, but from a writing standpoint, I just don't think it's done that, and I'm just very frustrated by that. So, very good episode of standalone television. Still has some problems with its footing in the grand scheme of things. We'll see what happens with the next two episodes. If I know we usually don't score and rate the episodes. If I had to rate this episode, I'd probably honestly give it a 5 out of 10. It's like it got halfway there. It got halfway there. It just didn't finish very strong. But in the future, if I do go back, like I'm curious to see how this is going to end, because when the season ends, depending on how it ends, I might go back and rewatch the whole season to see if maybe my perspective on it has changed. I almost wonder if this is going to be one of those shows that, like, once you know how it ends and you know what you're getting yourself into, kind of like with Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Once I understood, the first time I saw Scott Pilgrim, I hated it. I didn't understand what was going on. Once I understood what it was I was getting myself into, then I could watch it with fresh eyes and now knowing that and say, oh, okay, now I see why this works. So maybe we'll see when the show is over. But as it stands right now, I just want this to be over so we can move on with our lives and go on to, whatever the next thing is. I think the next thing is Wakanda Forever. So yeah, I know it's kind of a mixed bag review, but honestly, I'd rather have a mixed bag review than just sitting here and just shitting on this show constantly. I really don't like coming on here and bagging on this show. I really don't. It gives me no joy. It frustrates me, but it's why I'm here, I guess. So, Soul, I don't know if you watched this episode or not while you're traveling, but can't wait for you to get back so we can talk some more about this. And we'll see you guys again next week for another episode of She-Hulk Attorney at Law here on Off the Wall. Bye.